So I need glasses, so this is the size of my font.
I have glasses.
So, though I have about 20 pages of introduction, there's probably only about 20 words per page. So, thank you for coming, everybody. My name is Pam Bramble. I'm an associate professor of art here at, painting here at UConn, and I also am the coordinating director of the Arts Project. And tonight we're going to hear Juan Moreno talk about his creative process and about his career. And Juan and I were talking a few minutes before people started to arrive, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, but he would really appreciate people participating rather than he stands up here and talks about things and at the end we have a Q&A. He'd like it to maybe be a little more free-flowing than that, so he may ask you some questions and put a spotlight on you. And anyway, so we're looking for kind of a nice casual discussion. So now I will go to my notes to make sure that I cover everything. The Arts Project, most of you realize, is deeply interested in the idea of the creative process. And Davine Verstanding and Robley Whitson, we are the standing committee at this point. And one of the things that we discussed in the early stages was how do we exhibit the creative process? We know the artists can talk about it. So just very, very quickly, what we try to do is not just put on display finished works of art, but kind of peel the onion back and show you some various processes that the artist has employed. And these cabinets in this room are uniquely suited for that. The materials, the tools, how the artist actually goes from a blank piece of paper or a rough cut piece of stone to the finished work of art. So that's kind of central to what the Arts Project is about. If you came in through the main doors, you may have noticed our brick wall exhibition space, and that's where Juan has many of his beautiful, beautiful paintings. And I just wrote down a couple little notes that I'd like to share with you before I turn it over to Juan. Truly, in the exhibit Beyond Image, the abstract paintings do pay tribute to Juan's abiding interest in color. Each one is quite particular and very specific in terms of the colors that he chooses and the amount of color that he puts on the canvas. Each dot is made in the response to the dots that are already there. And one can imagine the complexity of relationships that starts to build once he has made 4 or 5 or 20 dots. It becomes a real search and find on his part for how those colors are going to interact. And I'm sure Juan will talk a little bit about this particular idea of his to isolate the color. The second part of our exhibit, as I said, is here. And this is where we show the artist's materials, which play a central role to the message that the artist has to share with you. Oftentimes we think of the subject matter and the theme, but the materials are really, really important. What the artist has chosen to communicate the theme or the idea that he or she has. In talking about his creative process, Juan notes that, quote, "In my approach to the paintings in this show, I departed from representational subject matter and executed my work focusing on color and composition. The works are abstract with no intended meaning on my part. I have sought to explore the dynamics of color and the illusion of space within the limited two-dimensional canvas. And I invite the viewer to interpret the work and become part of the creative process." A few biographical notes on Juan. Juan J. Moreno began his artistic studies in his native Colombia at the Atelier of David Mansour in Bogota. In 1986, he moved to the United States, and he continued his training at the Art Students League in New York City. In 2002, he earned both his his BA and his MFA in painting at Western Connecticut State University. Juan views his almost 30 years career as one that has evolved from making traditional portraits and landscape paintings to making formalist compositions and studies. Mr. Moreno's work has been exhibited throughout Connecticut, including shows at the Mattituck Museum, Alberta's Magnus College, Manchester Community College, and the Stylo in New Milford. In addition to his career in art, Juan has also taught studio art and art history at several Connecticut community colleges. He lives and works in Kent, where he and his wife, Karen, find inspiration from the natural world of the Litchfield Hills. So without any further ado, Juan Moreno.
Thanks for that nice introduction, Pam, and for all the work you did putting this exhibition together. I also want to thank David Steinbeck for suggesting to Pam that I have this exhibition. I'm really honored to be here. And what I'm going to talk about is basically the way my work evolved from being very representational to being completely abstract. And I started, like many artists, doing a lot of drawings, because drawing is said to be kind of like the fingerprint of the artist and the way to get to all arts. And it's very important to do this, and I still do it when I have a chance, because by drawing, I keep my eyes sort of sharp and keep looking at the subject that I'm working on, and I'm trying to pay attention to detail and trying to keep my hands active, to be active as an artist. And to me, that's what's important about being an artist. And I really do enjoy doing this kind of portraits, quick, short portraits that take about 30 minutes using a simple pencil. You can do all of this with the line and the contrast. And some of them are very quick, just the back side of a model. And I like this one particularly because it's a different composition. There's part of the shoe that goes out, and the model is sitting all over the painting. And I continue to do this kind of work. It's kind of like being in shape. But then I started studying what I wanted to do is oil painting. And this was a very basic palette that I started with, and very basic colors. And as you can tell, there is no black color here. It's almost like a impressionist palette. So I do this to get to know the color and what I can get with each one of them. And then it got a little bit more complicated and started adding more colors. And this is an exercise that I find very, very useful. And the obvious process of doing a still life and trying to get a composition trying to use the color in a way that represents the color describing the object. Is trying to get these tools that I got with the palette when I started mixing those colors and just following what the subject in front of me is telling me what to do. And I did portraits, which I still enjoy doing the portraits. Kind of like an off-center composition, a very simple background. And this one I did this recently and I couldn't finish it. It's actually a small painting, but I like the way it is sort of finished in a way. It's a center composition, and I hope to do some more. And doing these still lifes, these portraits, then I continue doing the landscapes. And this is something I did plein air, on the spot. And also this one I started doing on the spot outdoors, and I finished it at home. Trying to deviate a little bit from being too literal, I started adding a little bit of blue color that I didn't see when I was there. Now knowing that behind that I was using kind of like this theory of color, or using complementaries, that's using the blue against the orange. So all of that starts to fall into play, into the work. This is the same landscape. That was early fall, this is late fall. And look how different it looks. It's very interesting. And if you look in the background, there are kind of like some abstract elements to this work that it starts to kind of break away from the representational. In this painting, I used a lot of freedom. I had this painting in the background and finished for a long time. Then later on, I was very unhappy with it because it looked so cold and austere that I started adding colors to it. And I used the colors I wanted. I was breaking away. This apple is telling me to paint it this way. This cedar is telling me these colors. I started to kind of use, as it were, my poetic license. And this is completely going away. I had a lot of fun doing this, but this is a small painting. And I think it's actually very pleasant to look at. Even though I thought you would see in nature a landscape that would look like this. But if you come to my house, you'll see a different reality. I took a class at Northwestern Connecticut, at Western Connecticut a long time ago with Professor Bob Alberti, an abstract painting. And this is how I started sort of like to explore more, breaking away from representational artwork and doing, using just the colors. I enjoy doing the grid and with a kind of like a frame within a frame and trying to use colors that are kind of go together, that are not jarring or construct, they don't really contrast too strongly against each other. But it was my way of breaking more and more into abstract work. And this one was one of my attempts to do abstract work. It's basically a contrast of warm colors, as you can see, with very cool colors. It's a complementary contrast at the same time. It's a large painting, and it's interesting to notice that the paintings, no matter what size they all look the same size here on this slide. So, no matter, some of them are very small, and this one is about this big. They all look the same size. Now, I want to tell you about an exhibition I saw last year in the spring at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago. We were there during the spring, and I always go to museums, any city I go to, and they have this exhibition, Painting the Void. Paintings that were done during 1949 and 1962 as a reaction to the Second World War. And I had no idea what I was going to see there, but I came to find out that these paintings, most of them abstract, I had a connection somehow to the work that we're doing, and I'm going to explain why. At this exhibition, I saw this quote by the German psychiatrist and psychologist Erich Fromm. It says, "Creativity requires the courage to let go of certainties." And that really, it sounds so true to me, and I could really relate to it. Because sometimes when we are always doing what we know how to do, to take a chance, to a leap of faith, so to speak, it takes courage. And to me, in my own way to do my paintings, it took some of that. And the paintings in this exhibition, as I said, most of them were very abstract, so completely abstract. This is a painting by the Italian painter Alberto Burri, and it's burlap and sacks on a canvas. And you can see some of these at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. This one was there at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago. And as you can see, there is a content to the painting. It's the decadence of whatever, the destruction that the war brings, and the feeling of kind of abandonment and hopelessness that you can feel. But the painting is not intended to be beautiful, but the artist wants to convey in an abstract way a very strong feeling about the experience that he had during the war. So this painting is being abstract. The artist is trying to convey, to get empathy from the viewer, so to speak, to react to what he or she experienced during the war. So this painting was also at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago, and the artist. Raymond Haynes, he titled this painting Water Lilies. Is basically posters that he found in the walls, and he put them on a canvas, and he pasted them, and he named this painting Water Lilies. And I was wondering, why did he call this painting water lilies? Was it a pun on the water lilies that Claude Monet painted? Something that got destroyed? And maybe he's trying to, that is the work for me to do. What is he trying to tell me by showing me this work? About his experience with the war. And I heard someone said also, I don't know if I read this in this exhibition, that after the experience of war, how can anybody write poetry? But it seems, I mean, it has been proven that we go through these things and somehow we survive, we strive. You know, like we human beings somehow at the end reason. So this is this was the title of the painting, Water Lilies, and he said that he shifted from the realm of painting to that of truth. And painters can do a very good job sometimes at conveying the experience that we have. Now, I'm going to show 3 or 4 paintings that are abstract, completely abstract, and relate to a personal experience with the violence in my country, Colombia. Here I'm using color not as representational, but try to show something that I see outside, but more like using the color as a symbol. In this case, it's like a cauldron, it's a fire, it's something that is burning, something that is cooking in a place. And in Colombia, in the late 1990s and early 2000s, and even maybe in certain, not so much now, but what was going on in Colombia, I didn't think we would survive that, to be honest with you. The violence that was going on in so many different ways. A country of 45 million people, and that was my reaction to the experience that we had. Not representation, is completely abstract, but to me, if you look at this painting, I don't know what you make of it, but it conveys to me that something is going on, maybe that red against black is a sense of violence, and something is, I would say, something is happening. This is also a painting that relates to that. Is blue to me is a beautiful color, and the thing about blue is that it contrasts so well against the black. It really stands out. But then you see this red one, and it makes me wonder, if I don't tell you what this painting is about, what will you make of it? As a matter of fact, these paintings were all sold, and now they are in a private collection. And the person who bought them, I've never told them because that they were related to my personal experience, but that's what they are about. And the viewer or the person who looks at it makes their own conclusions, and you can reinterpret them. You know, the artist sort of loses ownership of the work.
Juan, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Are they all relative to the same scale, same size?
Actually, these paintings are all 48 inches by 36 inches.
Okay.
That's a great question because some of the ones I showed before were only 14 inches by 14 inches. And they really don't show very well in the canvas.
So you ask us what did we feel about it?
Yes,
I mean, the first two to me seem very much like isolation.
isolation. But that's a very good. I wonder what people feel about this painting.
The red almost looks like it's sitting on top of a map of the world with the off green and the blue behind it.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, did you make this one later because it seems like the blue represents freedom is near? Dead wrong.
That's a good question. To be honest with you, I don't remember.
Well, you said you survived. Your
I
country
survived. Actually, this painting particularly, if I don't tell you, I mean, this painting to me is about surviving, about resilience.
Freedom.
Freedom, exactly. It's not that, I mean, there have been violence, there have been a lot of atrocities, but now that I go to Colombia, and we've been there several times in the last 5 years, it's a beautiful place to go. And you go there and there's so many people smiling. I mean, it's like we survived this. You know, with the people going to college, the people being born, people, you know, starting business. We see a lot of joy, and life continues. So this is sort of like how those paintings about the Second World War that were done by those artists relate to my work in a personal level.
Could you go back to the previous one with the blue peeking out of the? Is the lighting of this picture of the painting shows some real gradations in the black where it's lighter in the middle and darker in the bottom. Is that more about the lighting, or is that that you took the picture with, or are there actually really gradations of black in the background?
Actually, Phil, this is in this painting, and since we're looking at the slide, we can see the texture of the oil paint on it. But there are gradations, and the way the light reflects on it is really different because I used a lot of thick paint in pastel, and you could see that there is a certain reflection of value in it, but it's just black. All of it is just black.
So it's a fairly flat field of black compared to the slide?
It is a black field of black, but there is a lot of, I remember when I did this painting, there's a lot of action from my part, so like that side of abstract expressionism, there's a lot of action put in the paint, almost like in a violent way.
Yeah, there's a lot of energy there. I just wondered about the tone. It's really buoyant. I mean, the blue coming through is really like, there's some hope, there's some beauty, there's some washing going on with that little maybe slice of nasty reality peeking through. But that's I really like that a lot.
Thank you.
I think it looks just like a waterfall. When I see it, it just looks like a waterfall.
That's wonderful. I mean, if we don't give titles to these paintings, and if we just leave it hanging on the wall, you know, leave it up to the viewer.
Well, I wonder how many people can see the blue as background rather than the black as background.
That's a good point. Usually, because the black is and the contrast is so strong with the blue, that the eye tends to go. I would say probably, since this is lighter, this may be coming forward a little bit.
But I can look at it and see the black coming forward too, and the blue in the background.
Yeah,
It's a window. You're a window into it.
that's fine. I'm glad you see it differently, because that's what the viewer does. We make the call. The artist can say anything the artist wants. Once it's out of the hands of the artist, you as the viewer, we as the viewers, we make the call.
I'm interested in the how concept. So what I mean by that is, if an artist has a concept that's intangible but real, how does one begin to even think about how to place it on the canvas? I don't know if that makes sense, but
That's a good question. And what it is the way I can explain that from my end is that once I know my medium, I can do a lot with it. You know, I think of abstract painting in a way as music without lyrics. If we look at representation of work as music with lyrics, you know, we follow the lyrics, and we follow the lyrics with the music, and everything goes very well together. But we also like a lot of music that doesn't have any lyrics, and we do enjoy it. And the musicians who compose this music, they don't have any lyrics, to go with it, but they are working with this music. And music can give you a lot of different feelings or moods, and they know how to change that. I think with artists, the color, we can use color the same way. Just like the same, master your medium. And for me to get to this work, this was, as you could see, this wasn't what I started with. But that's a good question. And I think every person has to find it, every artist has to find it for himself or herself. This painting, I did it, and this is a painting that a lot of people like. And I like to see what your reaction is to this painting before I say anything. Any volunteers? Okay.
After all the snow, we don't want to see that painting, Juan. It's not our favorite anymore.
Okay. Actually, this painting is.
I'll say this is one of my two favorites. I liked a lot of the sketches and stuff, but that was what kills me.
Actually, this painting is also 48 by 36. And when I did this painting, the blue actually it looks beautiful, and that black in the background, it brings a little bit of attention to that place. But when I put the red line underneath, to me, it changed the feeling. And what I'm going to say about this now is very personal, but visually, this painting reminded me of this painting. I was at the Minneapolis Institute of the Arts a while back, and I was walking down a hallway, and I looked to the side, and I saw this face that looked so real, this portrait that was, really conveying the feeling. And I got close to this painting, and I started looking at it. I was looking at it, and I noticed that, wait a minute, there is blood, and then there is a knife. And that's a painting by Rembrandt that is called Lucretia. So it's a representation of work, and the story of Lucretia, as some of you know better than I do, she was the daughter of a Roman nobleman during the control of the Etruscans at that time, and she got raped by one of them. So the next day, when she told that to her father and her husband, she decided to kill herself instead of sacrifice her honor. And there are many paintings that have been done about Lucretia. But then when I made the connection somehow between this and Lucretia, because the blood is not the first thing we see, but it was purely a visual reaction. That's why I wanted to ask you what the reaction was to this painting. But I'm going abstract to try to express something. This one, what is your reaction to this painting? Okay. Actually, I did this painting after 9/11. I was in Manhattan just a few days before, and I was in Manhattan the day right after 9/11. And I have been there that summer doing my internship at the Art Students League, and I had a wonderful time. That summer 2011 was warm, wasn't too hot, I could feel the breeze that I could feel in the streets. Manhattan is just beautiful. And I had this wonderful experience. I was there, and then I came back after 9/11. I was there on 9/12, and I could really feel the grief that was going on in the city. And my reaction days afterwards was very strong to it. And I had a personal, sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night, and I could feel that there was this uncertainty of these kind of things that were not as stable as I thought they were. But this work was, again, to me, this is an abstract work.
Juan,
Yeah.
go back to the one with the red line. Because that's what I thought of when I saw that, because in the back, it looks like the wreckage of war, buildings tumbling, and the red line I thought represented some kind of a gauge, like a scale of miles or scale of measurement to try to put all that wreckage into some kind of context.
Yes?
I just have to say, on that one, I did see a bed automatically, and it's like there's a tussle in the bed with the strokes, and then there's the blood. So it's interesting that you tell the story about rape. And then on the second one, when you asked that, I didn't want to blurt out, but I thought industrialization, because they did look like buildings, and then you mentioned 9/11, so.
So abstract work can, create that reaction in us. And that's what I personally intend to do with these works. I know it's not literal, it's not representational, but and this is a painting that I did more as a free experiment with color, trying to work with the color, the strong contrast of black and white, and trying to use I was playing with the illusion of the colors, that the lighter colors coming forward, the darker colors going back, sort of like an optical illusion of what's going on. So this was just basically a composition of color. And I'm going to show you now 3 paintings that are abstract expressionist works. And I saw this last year at the Art Institute of Chicago. And I'm going to explain how that relates to my work. This one is one of my first dot paintings. This one is actually in the hallway. And I started doing this as a landscape. And it ended up going as basically an abstract painting. And I'm sure some of you can tell me what this is.
A field.
A field.
Is
So-
it?
Yeah. I call it the landscape. I started working on a forsythia. That's how that started. And as you can see, the painting, the composition starts to go off the canvas. And there is no, like a center composition. So this is what the work of the abstract expressionists have in common. It's like an all-over composition.
Yeah.
And this painting by Jackson Pollock, which is at the Art Institute of Chicago, does that with the work. And he used a different technique to achieve this kind of work. And he called that a gray rainbow.
Huh.
This is a painting by William de Kooning. This is also at the Institute of Chicago. And I like to get to these paintings, and I like to look at them close up, because then you can see that your eye really doesn't stay in one place. You know, with the contrast of the darks and the light, the artist starts to sort of kind of play with your eye. It starts to send you in all directions, and it becomes more of a visual experience than the content of the work. Although he gave to this painting a title, Excavation. And there are a lot of things you can read in this work. Where you can find some anatomical figures, you can find some different parts of the human body, but that is just for, you know, kind of like the play of the viewer with the work. So I found de Kooning very, very interesting. They had an exhibition of his at the Museum of Modern Art 2 or 3 years ago, and I saw it at least 3 times. I had a lot of fun going to that exhibition. And this is a painting by one of my favorite artists. Her name is Joan Mitchell, and this is also at the Art Institute of Chicago. And you look at this painting, you would think that she got in front of this canvas and she started working on it very quickly. But what she said that she did is that she worked on the painting very deliberately, and then she would stop. And then she would go back to the painting and paint some more. So even though it has the feel of that it was done very quickly, kind of like an abstract expressionist, which it is actually done very deliberately. And she took her time doing it. And she called this painting very appropriately city landscape. I really like it because sometimes when we go into the city, it's just like this chaos, this total chaos. And if you want to paint this chaos, you can do it in a very representational type of work. But to me, I kind of relate to this sometimes better than And this is one of my paintings that I relate to in a way not that I'm comparing to the painters, but about the composition. I do relate my work in these paintings to the abstract expressionists, in the sense that the work goes out of the canvas. There is not a center that holds to it, and it's an all-over painting. And this painting has, in the background, has some kind of work that I did kind of quickly, actually, with big brush strokes. And then I added these dots of colors that some of them are complementary. They contrast with each other. So a lot of attention goes into doing this kind of work. There's not, and it's time consuming. They take longer to do than some of these other bigger paintings. This is
How big
another.
are these, Juan?
I'm sorry?
How big are these ones,
These
top
ones
pages?
are 28 inches by 28 inches.
They're on display.
They're okay.
So this is the type of work that I've done. Not that all the work I have done is like this, but I hope what you have seen, you're able to capture in a way the essence of how my work went from being very representational in the use of line, solid contrast, and color to being, I mean, you look at this compared to the first ones, there's a big difference.
If you're winding down, can you go back to the first one?
Oh, I like that.
Oh, yeah, let me see. This is a work that I wanted to finish and bring it over to the exhibition, but I couldn't. It's a work in progress that I have at home. Oh, let me see. Oh, I mean, so those were the last paintings of the work that I'm doing.
Oh, wow.
This is,
And when did you do these? What kinds of works?
this is what's called artistic anatomy. I did those in the 80s and the 90s.
Uh-huh.
Some of these I did about 5-6 years ago. This is where I was talking about the use of the
Yeah.
palette. Master your medium. You have to master your medium. That's what all the artists tell their students. Master your medium.
Can you talk a little bit about the color, the one before this, and sort of your system here?
Oh, I'll be glad to. Basically, this is still a very basic palette. It has 3 different kinds of blues, and I kept doing more and more of this. I ended up eventually adding black and other colors. And this is a very good exercise to anybody who's learning how to paint. I really recommend this. You align the colors from light to dark, the yellows, the reds, and the blues, and then you combine them with each other, and you see what other colors you get. For example, I found out that I could get a very interesting green from a cobalt blue and an English red with a little bit of white.
So Juan, what, did you photograph a palette and then paint off of it?
Oh, no, the palette basically is the colors that I choose, and I mix them. I do this all by hand.
It's a chart. It's a chart.
It's a chart, that's what it is.
Wow.
And I did this adding white, and this is the colors by themselves. It's a great exercise.
Uh-huh. Not bad.
And then, you know, I remember when I started painting, master your medium, and this is, I do it. I've done a lot of these. These are not the only ones.
Are these oil or acrylic?
These are all oil on painting.
Oil.
Oil on canvas or linen.
I remember a
I like.
professor years ago saying, get your craft down, and then we'll talk about whether it's art.
Exactly.
Oh, good. That is good. Get your craft down.
Can you go back to your birch trees, I suppose, two before that? One before, there. That just mesmerizes me.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
The background is, it's not dots, but it definitely is like patchwork, which isn't obvious, but then you can see it.
Actually,
really
that is a very small landscape. That's 14 by 18 inches.
Really?
It looks huge. And this painting I did on the spot. It didn't take more than probably 30, 40 minutes. But that's the fun. I mean, painting can be a lot of fun too. Not only a lot of work, but it can be a lot of fun.
Are most of your paintings, was it 20 by 40? I was walking
Those
by.
in the hallway are 28 by 28.
28 by.
Yeah. And some of the other ones that I was showing you that are larger, most of them are. Let's see, this one is 28 by 48, and this one is 36 by 49. And these ones are all 48 by 36. So they're about this big. I don't know, any questions?
Yeah, lots
With this one and the one after it, did you do them at the same time, in succession, or?
Yeah, I did them at the same time.
This is almost like this burned a hole through the canvas and then the water or the sky came through.
They're kind of sexy, Juan, right? They're sexual.
No. I was thinking the reason why the scale is important is that when they're small, those become shapes that you're looking at. When the canvases get larger, they have the opportunity to become spaces. Both the interior, the entire piece, and the space and interesting.
I know that that's what they say, you have to meet the painting in person. Because looking at a slice or looking at books, we miss a lot out of the work,
Sure.
the experience.
When you go to Chicago.
Yes, you have to go to Chicago. Now you have another good reason. They have one of the best museums in the country.
Oh,
the
it's
Art
so
Institute of Chicago.
Fabulous.
They put a new wing from the American wing, and it's just spectacular.
I'm sorry,
Thinking
can you
that
tell
same
me,
word. Spectacular.
I'm sorry, can you tell me the size of this painting?
This one is 48 by 36. It's about this big, this tall, about this big.
Probably about what's on there.
Yes.
Did you sell that one, Juan?
This one somebody wants to buy. Yeah. But they told me they don't have wall space. So.
Tell them to buy a new house.
I get on your message. Good suggestion. Well, you don't have. I hope drive safely going back.
We're not leaving yet, we just got here, we have to look at the stuff now.
But please enjoy the exhibition. I'm really honored to have done this presentation.
Thank you so much. Please don't run off. No, don't run off. We have light refreshments in the back, and so we can continue the conversation in a little more informal manner. And for those of you who are not on the mailing list for the arts project, there's a sign-in book right there. You can make comments about Juan's work, but also if you think you'd like to be part of our mailing list, just put your email down and your mailing out to school. Take care of it.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for coming, and please, light refreshment time.